All right. Hello and good evening. My name is Catherine. I work with SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 4 affordable rental units at Lighthouse Station at Woods Hole in Falmouth. And the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the affordable unit. And I'll also discuss the application, eligibility, and lottery processes, and then what to expect after the lottery is run. So as you can see on your screen, if you have Zoom open, there are some slides that I'll be flipping through tonight. If you have any questions during this session, you're welcome to either type them into the chat feature in Zoom, or you can unmute yourself to ask the question, and I'll be asking throughout the presentation if anyone has any questions at certain points. This session is being recorded, so it will be available for people who were not able to join the session to view it later on. So we just ask that during the session you were muted when you came into the room. Just keep yourself on mute unless you do have a question, just to minimize the outside noise. So just for some background information on who we are, so SEB Housing, we are an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We're not the on-site management team. We haven't seen the property in person. We've been hired by the developer to market these affordable units and conduct this information session. We're eventually going to be the ones collecting and reviewing applications when you submit your application for the lottery, and we'll determine applicants' eligibility for the affordable housing program in order to run the lottery. So in the initial phases of this process, we're your main point of contact rather than the management office over at Lighthouse Station. But further along in the process, that on-site management team will take over as your point of contact. So there's a few steps in the process, and the first is to apply for the affordable housing lottery and to be found eligible for the affordable housing program based on that application that you submit to SEB Housing. So during that point, you'll be in touch with us if you have any questions, obviously during this session, and then even after you submit your application, if you have questions, we'll be your main point of contact at that point. Once the lottery is run, after that, if you're one of the top households on the waiting list, you'll be in contact with the leasing office, and the management team over at Lighthouse Station will screen your household for lease eligibility. So that's separate from the screenings that SEB Housing does. And it might include, credit check, rental history check, background checks, that sort of thing that you may be familiar with if you've rented before. And then the third step in the process, once you've been both lease approved and you were in the lottery, you'll be referred back to SEB Housing. And that's the point where you'll need to submit your verification of income, assets, all that other information that you did not need to submit with your lottery application. So you'll have about a week to 10 days to get all that information into us, and we'll work with you to make sure you get your completed application in. So again, when you apply for this lottery, you don't need to submit your income and asset information. That will be requested from you later on in the process if you're one of the top households on the waiting list after the lottery. So in order to apply, it's just that lottery application that you need to send in. So that shouldn't take you all that long. It's just a few pages, and you're self-reporting your income when you're applying. So if you haven't already, you should go to SEB Housing's website. So it's sebhousing.com. And if you click on Affordable Housing Opportunities, you're going to select I want to rent, because this is a rental opportunity, and you will select Lighthouse Station at Woods Hole, because you'll be then taken to a page specific to this property. That's where the downloadable version of the lottery application is, and the information packet. The information packet includes most of the information that I'll be covering during the session tonight. I won't have time to go over every single question that's on there or all of the information. So even if you have attended this session or watched the recording, it's recommended that you take a look at that information packet so you have all the information you need. So if you choose to apply for one of these affordable units, you'll first need to complete the lottery application. And once you do that, you can submit it to us in one of several ways. So you can submit it by email, by emailing us at info@sebhousing.com. That can be an attachment to your email. You can scan it over. If that doesn't work for you, you can also send it by regular mail, or by fax. The fax number is listed on the first page of the application. And lottery applications are due on November 4th by 2 p.m. So they have to be either delivered or postmarked by that date in order to make it into the lottery. You do not need to be a resident of Falmouth to apply for this lottery. I'll talk a little bit later about local preference, but just know that that is not a requirement for this lottery. The affordable apartments are going to be ready for occupancy shortly after the lottery is run. So the lottery is going to take place in December, and there shouldn't be much of a delay in leasing a unit once applicants have cleared all the income screenings. I do want to say up front, because we had a few questions about this, if you've searched for Lighthouse Station at Woods Hole if you've Googled it or anything like that, there is a website. You'll see that the website says that, Lighthouse Station is referred to as a 55+ community with townhomes for purchase, so for sale. And I just want to clear up any confusion there. We put this on our website as well, but while most of the community at Lighthouse Station is condominiums that are for sale to households with one member over 55 years or older, these affordable housing units, these 4 lottery units, are rentals, and there is no age restriction. That age restriction does not apply to these 4 units. So I just want to put that out there because there was some questions about it. So if you go to lighthousestation.com, they have some lovely photos of the area, the community, and you might want to take a look at that, even though the pictures that they have may not be the affordable unit specifically, but it'll give you a feel for kind of the aesthetics of the community, and just has a lot of beautiful photos of just the Woods Hole area in general.
I have a question.
Sure.
I stopped down to see the property last week,
Mm-hmm.
and part of the property is the preservation of the dome.
I saw that, yeah.
From the Nautilus hotel that was previously there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just curious of how that integrates into the community. Is it owned by the community? What are they going to do inside this dome? The town of Falmouth has made them historically preserve it because it's been there for a while. So do you have any information on that?
The only information I have is what's on their website. So I saw that was mentioned. They had a picture of it, and they said they're working with the town to preserve it. So it doesn't sound like it's going anywhere. I'm not sure if they're going to be doing anything with it in terms of events or anything like that. But it said it's behind one of the buildings in the property. It is not behind the affordable buildings. I think it said it was behind Building C, if I'm recalling correctly when I was looking at the website. But that's definitely a question that if you're more curious about that, you should check with them once you're in touch with them, filling out a lease application and all of that, and they'll be able to give you probably more information. That was an interesting feature that I saw, though, on their website. All right, so Lighthouse Station at Woods Hole. So this is a brand new residential development. And like I said, it's going to have these 4 affordable rental units located within 2 duplex buildings on the property. Each unit has 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. They're all equipped with brand new stainless steel appliances, a washer and dryer in each unit, laminate flooring, off-street designated parking for each property, and beautiful location overlooking the ocean from a hill. So 2 of the affordable units are 1 story, so meaning the living area, the bedrooms are all on the same floor. The other 2 affordable units are side-by-side duplex units, so they occupy 2 floors. It's just kind of the setup is different there in terms of the floor plan. All 4 affordable units will have a private deck area and access to the basement. And each unit also has a backyard grassy area with plantings that are going to create some division and privacy for the renters. So tenants will pay the cost of electricity, which is also used for cooking, heating, and hot water. Sewer charges, cold water, and parking are included in the rent. The community is pet-free, though obviously requests for service animals will be reviewed as is required by the leasing office. And the rent for these 2 bedrooms is $1,913, and the units are about 1,255 square feet. The affordable rent is not set in accordance with an applicant's income or financial circumstances. So what I mean by that is the rent doesn't change if your income changes. So this isn't set up like subsidized housing, if any of you are familiar with that. For this housing program, the rents are set using a formula that's based off of HUD, so the Department of Housing and Urban Development Area Median Income, or AMI, for the Falmouth Barnstable area. So the rent may increase once a year. That typically occurs in the spring, but would not occur within your first year of the lease. So if you were to sign a lease for January, your rent would stay the same for that first 12-month period. Since we—
I have a question.
Yep.
On the rent, does the town of Falmouth have rent control?
No, not that I know of. They do have— the town weighs in on these rent increases every year, though. So when we're recalculating the maximum affordable rents or allowable rents each year, both the town, so in this case, the town of Falmouth, and then the state department that oversees this affordable housing program, they both need to approve of the rents that are recalculated each year. So, you never know how much it is going to increase because it is based off of that formula that the Federal Housing and Urban Development Agency puts out. But historically, in the last few years, as everyone knows, rents have been increasing in Massachusetts. So, but again, they have to be approved by the town and the state. So we do anticipate that there's going to be more interested and eligible applicants than there are available units, because we only have the 4 affordable units here. That's why we're doing a lottery. So these apartments are going to be made available only to households who qualify for this affordable housing program. So in order to qualify for the affordable housing program, households have to have annual incomes that are up to 80% of the area median income. I'll touch on those income limits in just a minute, and we'll talk a lot more about the eligibility criteria for this affordable housing program. So like I said, the units are available pretty much right after the lottery is run, so there shouldn't be much of a delay between completing screenings and being able to sign a lease. So before I move on to eligibility criteria for the affordable housing program, again, let me know if you have any questions on what we've covered so far.
I have a question.
Sure.
I currently live in Georgia. I lived on the Cape for years. So I'm job hunting up there right now.
Huh?
So I wonder, well, you said you can put an approximation on the original application. And then when it gets further in the process, I put my solid income. So I guess I would ask if an offer letter, a job offer letter would suffice with the salary. Would that suffice in the financial?
Yep, it would. And then for now, yeah, you could put your income down that you have now, or yeah, if you have an offer letter, that is perfectly fine as well. Just make sure it has your start date and the salary and all of that. And yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so the eligibility criteria here. So there's 4 main eligibility criteria for the affordable housing program. And the first is, I touched on it already, but the households that are applying for this lottery need to have income and assets that are in the qualifying income parameters that we'll talk about in just a minute. The second item to keep in mind for the eligibility purposes is that household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So for example, if you're a 1-person household or a couple that shares a bedroom, you're generally considered to be what's called a type 1 household. And you're free to apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but larger type 2 households are going to be placed ahead of you on these 2-bedroom waiting lists. Some example of a type 2 household would be all households with 3 or 4 household members, so 3 or 4 people, as well as some 2-person households. And in the information packet, I think it's page 7, there is more information on household type and size. And when you are filling out your application, you'll be designating yourself as type 1, type 2 on there when you're selecting which criteria and which household kind of breakdown applies to your family. The third eligibility criteria, so applicants cannot currently own a home. So all homes would need to be sold prior to being able to apply for a lease at Lighthouse Station. So what that means is you would need to be off the deed of your home if you currently own one. And then the fourth eligibility criteria, this doesn't come up very often, but households cannot have financial interest in the development and can't be considered what's called a related party. So what that means is if you are, if you work for the developer or the management company, you won't be eligible for this opportunity. And then just circle back on the first eligibility criteria that I mentioned. So since these are affordable units, they're going to be made available to rent at prices that are lower than the, well, in this case, I was going to say they're going to be lower than the identical units within the property, but in this case, the property, all the other units in the property are going to be owned because they're condos. But these are being made available only to households that qualify for the affordable housing program. So the maximum income limits that you see on your screen right now. So if you're a 1-person household, you won't be eligible for this lottery unless your total household income is below $68,500. A 2-person household would need to have a total household income under $78,250, and so on. So these are the maximum income limits for the affordable housing program. You'll also see up here the approximate minimum income. So when I say the maximum income limit is set in stone, that's a programmatic regulation. It can't be, you can't be, $100 over and so forth. But for the approximate minimum income, there's a little bit of wiggle room here to the $53,000. So if you make just under that, but you have liquid assets that could be tapped into to be able to pay the rent, then the leasing office may approve you. But ultimately, in terms of enforcing the approximate minimum income, it will be the leasing office's decision as to whether or not you qualify. Because there is no minimum income for the affordable housing program. It's the management team who has decided that anyone who's going to rent needs to make at least the $53,000. And that's based off of, just one second. So that's based off of 2.3 times the total house, 2.3 times the monthly rent. So that's how that $53,000 was set as the minimum. Go ahead, sir.
If you have a Section 8 certificate, how does that figure into the
Sure.
Formula for the income?
Sure. So if you have the only exception to that minimum income is if you have a Section 8 MRVP, mobile housing voucher, the minimum income amounts do not apply to anyone with a mobile subsidy that is going to be using it at this property. And that's because the agency that administers your voucher is going to be paying a portion of your rent. So those minimum incomes are only applicable for households who don't have a housing subsidy. So that's a great question. That was something I was going to get to in a few minutes. So thank you for bringing it up now. All right, so in terms of how we calculate your income, so households that are applying for this lottery, again, do not need to submit your income, asset, any of that verification information with your lottery application. But once you submit your lottery application, if you are approved for the lottery based off of what you've self-reported, you're going to be sent a link to a documentation requirements guide. And that's basically going to detail exactly what types of documentation we're going to need from you, depending on your income sources, such as how many pay stubs or how many bank statements we'll need from you later on down the line. So just make sure that you're taking a look at that if you're approved for this lottery, so you can kind of start to gather all the information that you will need later on in the process. And just to give you a basic overview of how your income is going to be calculated. So for this program, income is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So that includes bonuses and overtime, so income that you may not be guaranteed from week to week. The only exceptions in terms of the income that we will be counting is income from minors. So if you have a 16-year-old, for example, in the household that is working, if they're earning a wage, we're not going to count their wage income at all. If you have a dependent full-time student, so maybe you have a 22-year-old college student living with you, we're only going to count the first $480 of their wages when determining your eligibility for the program. But everything else we do need to count, and we must count, according to this program, the gross income. So the amount you make before taxes, although most of us are not taking home the full salary, what's listed on the pay stubs, but unfortunately it is that gross income that we need to take into consideration. And then how we calculate income isn't the same for everyone because everyone's income circumstances are unique. So some applicants are going to have a weekly salary that's completely consistent throughout the year. But then there's also people who are self-employed or are working seasonally. So in those circumstances, we may need to look further into the past to be able to project what your anticipated income is for the next 12 months. Because if you have that sporadic income that sort of comes and goes with the seasons, then we'll need to see probably a full year or more to make that call. And then specifically for applicants who are self-employed, so you're going to need to complete what's called a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. Your business expenses are taken into account if you are self-employed. But if you're not self-employed, like I said, it is that gross income that we'll need to count. So unfortunately, for in terms of eligibility purposes, we wouldn't be able to, deduct expenses that you have, like car payment or insurance premiums, that sort of thing, if you're not self-employed. So in general, any income that you have been making, we're going to have to assume that you'll continue to be making it going forward unless we have definitive documentation confirming that that income source is no longer coming to your household. So for example, if you switch jobs, a written letter from your former employer confirming that you're no longer with them, or something from them saying that bonuses are not going to be paid out this year, that sort of thing. When you're filling out your application, just make sure you're listing every source of income on there. So not just wages, but if anyone in your household is collecting Social Security benefits, unemployment, workman's compensation, pension, any of that sort of thing. Yep, and I mentioned the minimum income amounts and the exceptions to that in terms of the voucher, if anyone has a mobile voucher that they'll be using. So in general, households without a housing subsidy will need to have incomes between the minimum income floor of $53,000 and the maximum income limit of, that's dependent on your household size right here. There's no asset limit for affordable rental opportunities. So you might be retired, you could have a significant amount of assets in the bank account, and that is fine. We still, although there is no asset limit, we still need to collect information related to assets. So, and that's because any income that is generated by your assets, that income would need to be counted. So if you, had a lot of interest coming into one of your accounts. All All right, so I covered the eligibility criteria. So before I move on to the lottery itself, again, let me know if any questions, and then I'll move on to the next section here.
Just one question about this single person. Is it just, I mean, should I not even apply because I'm a single person? It seems like the single person kind of is at the bottom of the, you know, the lottery. Is that how I heard that?
You'll be behind households that have more than one person, but I wouldn't say that should discourage you from applying, because we really don't know how many households are going to be in this lottery, and we don't know how many households are going to qualify after they've gone through the screenings, right? Because we still have the lease screening, we still have the income screening that comes even after the lease screening. So I can tell you for right now, there's less than a month left. I think we have 10 completed applications. There's 4 units. Usually there's, you know, at least twice the amount of people that need to be screened in order to fill 4 units, for example. So I'd be surprised if, you know, all 10, I'd be very surprised if all 10 applicants were eligible and moved forward to lease, or were interested in doing that. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested, you should apply as soon as possible just to get that process started. Once we receive your lottery application, it's going to be reviewed by SCB Housing, and we'll contact you if any information is missing or appears incorrect, so you'll have that chance to correct and resubmit as necessary. But like I said, it's just self-reporting your income at this stage. If you're found eligible for the lottery, you'll be sent a lottery application number. So as you can see on your screen here, it would be in the form of a series of numbers. So if you were the very first person to submit your application for Lighthouse Station and you were approved for the lottery, your number would be A.001. That is just an anonymous identifier, so your name doesn't have to be called during the lottery for privacy purposes. It's not a ranking of any sort. It just corresponds, like I said, with that the order in which your lottery application was approved. The letter that you received is going to be an email, actually. The email you received with your lottery application number is also going to confirm whether your household applied for local preference. So you will have indicated on your application that you believe your household qualifies for that preference, and the necessary verification would need to be submitted after the fact. So if you are one of those top households on the waiting list, you would need to submit confirmation that you live in Falmouth, you work in the town of Falmouth, or you work for a business located in the town, or you might have a child that's attending Falmouth Public Schools. 2 of the affordable units at Lighthouse Station will have preference for local households. And what that means is local preference households would have priority for those units compared to households who don't have local preference. There's a lot more information. Yep.
On local preference. So one of the requirements for local preferences is if you have a job within the town of Falmouth. When is the date, like roughly the date that you have to turn in that final documentation that you're working for a business in the town of Falmouth?
So we wouldn't be asking for that until after the lottery. So this would be in December, possibly. Yeah, it would be December. Because the lottery is taking place in December, and then hopefully we're inviting households forward. Yeah, I'd say December or even early January, because you would be doing the lease screening first with the management team first. So it's SCB Housing that's looking for that local preference confirmation. So yeah, it'd still be a couple months from now. And so when you're filling out the application, though, you don't want to, if you don't think you're going to qualify for that preference, you don't want to select yes in terms of local preference, because you'll lose your spot on the waiting list. So that's up to you. You know, if you currently live in Falmouth, definitely check off yes, you might qualify for that preference. But if you don't think you will, definitely select no, because you don't want to be bumped to the bottom of a waiting list because that didn't materialize. And again, that's for 2 of the units. We don't know how many people are going to actually qualify for local preference. So again, that shouldn't be a deterrent for you either in terms of applying, but just know that 2 of the 4 units will have local preference and 2 will not. So there will not be a preference for local households for 2 of the units, just for the other 2. So that email, again, that has the lottery application number, is also going to confirm whether or not you've indicated a need for a disabled accessible unit. So one of the affordable units, you might have saw on the first slide there, or in the information packet, one of the affordable units at Lighthouse Station is built out for persons with disabilities. And so applicants who require the features of that unit will also have priority for the disabled accessible unit. Again, we don't know how many people, if any, will apply for that, but that is a preference as well. If you're found to be ineligible at any time, instead of receiving the notice from us that you've been found eligible for the lottery, you'll get a email saying that you're over income, for example, and you'll be informed of that by email. You're always encouraged to contact us with any questions if you're not sure as to why you were found ineligible, if you have anything else that you want to run by us. So the lottery itself, oh, sorry, the lottery is on November 19th. I was thinking it was December. But still, we wouldn't be looking for that information until December. All right, so the lottery is going to be held virtually on November 19th at 6 p.m. So it's the same format as this information session. It'll be via Zoom. And depending on the number of eligible applicants we have, the format will either be, I will draw lottery numbers from a box and hold them up to the screen and record everything, or we will digitally randomize the results on a computer and share it with you via screen share, like I'm sharing these slides. So during the lottery, every lottery number is drawn or picked. Sometimes we think, if there's 4 units, there's going to be 4 numbers picked. That's not the way that this will work, though, because the purpose of this lottery is to establish an order for the waiting list. So in general, it's beneficial if your number is called early in the lottery, but just keep in mind that, local preference households that are type 2 and type 1, everybody's going to be mixed in during this drawing. So you're not going to know during the lottery session itself where you fall on the waiting list or where you'll be placed on the waiting list. That is because I will need to sort the results after the lottery itself to make sure that we're giving everyone the proper preference. So also keep in mind that households who were entered into the lottery could be found to be ineligible by SCB Housing or the leasing office, so they may ultimately decide just not to rent the unit. So if your number is drawn later in the lottery, you shouldn't lose hope in terms of being able to move forward in this process and eventually rent one of the affordable units. So like I said, after the lottery, I'll populate the waiting list, taking the preferences into consideration, and we always do our best to send the waiting list to applicants as soon as possible. Usually it's the evening of the lottery, so sometime later on that night or the next morning at the latest. When you're reviewing that email with the waiting list, you're going to find your lottery application number, so the A.001, for example, and you'll be able to see where you fall on the waiting list. At that point, you'll have a better idea. If you're one of those top households, you'll be moving on to the next step in the process, which is to apply for a lease. And so following the lottery, you'll be in touch with the management team. So your contact information will be provided to them at that point. You'll also be giving the management team's contact information so you can move on to that step of applying for the lease. You'll have about 5 days to contact them and initiate that lease screening process. And so remember that SCB Housing is screening you for this lottery and then for program eligibility, but it's the management team that's screening for your lease eligibility. And you want to be aware too that the leasing office is likely to invite more eligible household or more waiting list households to complete a lease screening than there are available units. So at Lighthouse Station, there are 4 2-bedroom affordable units but it's likely that more than 4 households are going to be invited from the waiting list to complete the lease screening. And that's common for all management companies. That's often done because leasing units is a slow process. It's slowed down by households who don't qualify or maybe have changed their mind since they submitted their application maybe several months before. And so they just want to move the process along for everyone. And so that's part of the reason that we always suggest that even if you're that top household on the waiting list, you're not going to immediately give notice to your current property owner if you're renting, because you don't know yet if you've been approved to rent at Lighthouse Station. There's still a few steps in the process that need to happen. Once you are lease approved, that's the point in the process where having a position near the top of the waiting list is beneficial, because if you're that top household on the 2-bedroom waiting list, you're going to have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit. So you're able to, view multiple units of the property and choose which one you prefer. That's true even if someone behind you on the waiting list happens to complete their lease eligibility with the management office prior to you doing so, because the leasing office needs to honor the order of the waiting list. So if you're the first person on the waiting list, you get the first choice of unit. So once you've reserved an affordable unit, at that point, the leasing office over at Lighthouse Station will let us know that you've been approved, and then we'll coordinate, SCB Housing will coordinate with you to get all of your income, asset, and tax documentation so we can determine your final eligibility for the affordable housing program. And so at that point, hopefully you've taken a look at that documentation requirements guide that I mentioned, and so you have a number of pay stubs set aside, your tax returns, that sort of thing that we'll need, and you'll have about 10 days to get that information into us. And again, we'll work with you. There's a lot of information that needs to be sent in. A lot of times households don't send everything in on the first attempt. That's fine. We'll send you an incomplete notice. We'll work with you to make sure that you have all of the information into us, even if it takes a little longer than that 10 days. Once SCB Housing approves your file, you'll be notified, and you'll be able to then go ahead back to the leasing office and establish a move-in date with the management team over there. And then once you're leased, there's no additional screenings or income screenings that you need to do until your lease renewal date. So if you sign a lease, for example, for January 1st, we hope that come next January, you've enjoyed living there and you want to renew your lease. If you do, you'll need to recertify your income with the leasing office. And typically they start that about 3 months in advance. And you'll be asked to submit the scaled down version of the information that you sent in to apply for the lottery. If your income, yep.
So with that recertification, do you have to do any kind of recertification with HUD or the town of Falmouth along with the leasing recertification?
So the leasing office would be the only one you need to do. If you have a housing voucher, you need to still do the recertification that you do for the voucher, but that's completely separate from the management team's recertification. So nothing with the town per se.
Okay, so like I'm in an affordable housing unit in Boston, and during recertification, we have to recertify with SCB Housing, and then we have to recertify with Boston Planning and Development Association. Is there any third party, like Development or Planning Association, that we have to recertify with that has to do with HUD or Falmouth? Okay, thank you.
No, yeah, but again, if you're recertifying with your like where you are now, if you're recertifying with the agency that administered your voucher, you'll still have to do that with them. It might not be the exact same time of year, but that would still be happening. So you might have 2, but you're not going to have 2 associated with Falmouth. So if your income is increased when you're recertifying your income, after that first year of your lease or leading up to the first year of your lease, that's fine, because households remain eligible for the affordable housing apartment as long as the household income doesn't exceed 140% of the current year's area median income. So if you look at the information packet, it has the exact numbers in there, and I don't think I put them on here, but if you qualified for, if you're a two-person household and you qualify for this lottery because your household made under $78,250 in a year, it would be quite a bit more than that, that you'd still remain eligible to rent this unit. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there. It doesn't mean, you know, you have to qualify at that low income for years on end to be able to remain in your home. So that's great. So that covers everything I wanted to get through on the information packet, and just kind of the general information about the affordable housing program, who is eligible for it, how to apply. Any other questions? Once again, the application deadline. Yep. Go ahead.
No, you can go. I'll go after you.
No, I was just going to say the application deadline is November 4th, so you got a little bit less than a month left to get those applications in.
So my question was about parking. So in the information packet, it says that the affordable housing units will have an assigned parking spot. So like I said, I went to the property this week, and I noticed that every building has garages in it. You know, every duplex has 2 garages in it. There are some marked spots outside. So I was just curious, is like every single unit that's available for affordable housing, are they going to have to park outside, or is any of them going to get garage spots?
Those garages are for the condos, I believe, because there's no garage attached to the affordable housing duplexes. So the picture that's here, that's one of the duplexes. I know you can't really see it because there's the text over it, but there's 2 buildings that house the 4 affordable units, and the buildings that you probably saw were the condos that have the garages kind of underneath and attached to them. I saw those on the website as well. And so it's a similar style and everything, but I believe it says it's off-street parking in terms of the information that the developer gave us. So in the information packet, you'll notice it says
assigned parking.
Off-street designated parking, yeah. So it'll be assigned in terms of the spot, but it's not garaged. Yeah. Anything else? All right, thank you all for your attendance. If you have any questions for us, it's info@sdbhousing.com. It's the easiest way, or the quickest way, to get in touch with us. And that's our phone number as well, if you'd rather call. And we look forward to getting your application. If you have any questions that you didn't think of tonight, definitely reach out. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.